Ladies and gentlemen, Lumpy Gravy is... Welcome back to the channel. I hope that you guys are having a great day. I gotta do something about this squeaky chair. Thank you so much for clicking on the video and for showing up today. We are listening to part 1, Lumpy Gravy from Frank Zappa and... I'm gonna mispronounce this. Abnusial's Emuka Electric Symphony Orchestra and Chorus. Lumpy Gravy. We're listening to part 1, the first half, the first side of the album released 1968, one of his solo albums. Why we're listening to this? It was suggested and sponsored by Alan. So Alan, thank you so much for the support. Thank you so much for the recommendation as well. It's been kind of cool hitting these different, completely different aspects of Zappa's music and such. And especially with this, with the 1968 release date, this is predating, from what I know, like Mothers of Invention with some of the albums we've covered from that, from them, and some of Zappa's other albums we've covered as well. So it's kind of interesting that this is kind of predating that. Now, Alan had said that this is the origin of the People in the Piano idea that we listened to with part 3, oh my gosh, with Diofa recently. And so it's kind of interesting how it kind of connects, this being so early in his career and that being so further down the road. And also an introduction to his orchestral music. Now, what I thought was kind of interesting, I couldn't help but see. Let me pull you guys up here. Well, no, I'm going to pull you guys up here. I have stuff on my screen you don't need to see. But Zappa is only composing and conducting the music. So he's not actually taking part in playing it, but he did compose it all. And he's, of course, conducting and the players here, which I think is really, really interesting. And it's going to be really interesting to hear what he comes up with in this kind of case and in this kind of genre and sound, So let us go ahead and dive on in, down the headphones as always. Hope you guys are doing well. It's a wonderful afternoon right now. Just beautiful weather. Got a cup of some coffee. That's good. Let's go ahead and dive into it. We'll of course discuss it a little bit after part 1. I love the album cover.
The way I see it, Barry, this should be a very dynamite show.
A surf rock show tune. Sounds like a theme song to an opening of an old 50s, 60s show. It's also broken up into a lot of different parts, just so you know. Kind of scoping out the place, kind of jazz. That's step. has a very sophisticated kind of proggy sound to it. Getting that 7/8 time as well. Never mind. Interesting production change too.
A bit of nostalgia for the old folks.
It's got like a dubstep sound. He's changing the stations on their radio.
Advocating dark clothes.
If I'm not alone, how long have I been asleep?
As long as I have.
Did you ever live in a drum?
No.
Well, then you weren't me.
I only dreamt I lived in a drum. Ever since it got dark. Dreaming is hard.
Yeah, but with nothing over your head?
No, just light. Over my head and underneath too.
I don't think I could take it without anything over my head.
I couldn't either.
Well, why don't you go out and see what's out there?
Well, I don't know if that's what's out there.
Oh, that's a thought.
Yes,
If you
but still
want-
you can say darker and darker. I don't know what the outside of this thing looks like at all.
I do. It's dark and murky. How do you get your water so dark? 'Cause I'm paranoid. I'm very paranoid. And the water in my washing machine turns dark out of sympathy. Out of sympathy? Yes. Where can I get that? At your local drugstore. How much? It's from Kansas.
This is not from Montana. It's that Dixieland kind of jazz.
Bored out 90 over with 3 Strongberg 97s.
He's just tuning his radio and going through different channels. Drop salt. That part was kind of like the Varese.
Chinese,
Like the Varese.
Because I was making $2.71 an hour.
I keep switching girls all the time because if I'm able to find a girl with really a groovy car that I can build up, man, I'll go steady with her for a while until I build up her car and blow up the engine.
This is... That's cool. That was cool how it switched into this more conventional groove right here. And that melody sounds like something from Zappa, like later in his career. Like something Ruth played on. That part.
I worked in a cheesy newspaper company for a while, but that was terrible. I wasn't making enough money to build anything. And then I worked in a printing company and a couple gas stations. Oh, at the gas station where I was working, my brother had just gotten married, and he bought a new car, and his wife was having a kid and all this miserable stuff, and he needed a job, so I gave him a job at the gas station, which I was fired because, you know, he was going to work there. And he had his car on the rack, and he was lubing it and changing tires and everything all the time. And so he got fired because he was goofing off, man, and he just kept taking parts and working on his car day and night. So he lost that job, and I went to work at another gas station. He took that one, you know, so he could feed the kids and that. Then I went to work in an aircraft company, and I was building these planes. I worked on the XB-70. I was the last welder on there. But it was pretty good bread because I was making $2.71 an hour. I'm making $125 a week, and yeah, it was good enough money to be working on. So I got an Oldsmobile, a groovy Olds. But I was going with this chick at the time. By the time I got the Olds running decently, she went out and tore up the engine and the trans, and you know, her and her girlfriends would get in there and booze it up and tear up the seats. Just rip the seats completely out. So I got a 56 Olds, which was this one chick that I was going with, and we used to drive that all over the place, and finally she got rid of that. And I got another pickup.
Musically, it does sound like what I guess an old pickup would sound like. Some fast drumming. Sounds like music for a final climax, or an act of a movie or a TV series from like the 60s or 70s. Kind of sci-fi fantastical. A battle flute.
Oh man, who knows if I can go through this again.
I thought it was gonna end with that, like, in that scene. Would I be, maybe this is some recency bias, would I be correct in saying that this feels like Frank Zappa's Amarok compared to Mike Oldfield, in which it goes through so many seemingly randomized sections and sounds and scenes and directions that almost have, no specific correlation or relation to one another, and yet they're kind of thrown in there kind of in a puzzling hodgepodge kind of way. Slightly disorienting. Perhaps there's, story and symbolism or something metaphorical going on behind the scenes, but at least on an initial first listen, not quite apparent. However, and based off of Alan, what you said, I can definitely see the Varese, I hope I'm pronouncing his name correctly, I don't remember if I am. I can definitely see that influence in here with what we listened to with Poem Electrique, because it does go through those different tones and scenes, like I said, seemingly with no sense of direction. There's especially a moment about halfway or so, I mentioned it, but where it really felt inspired by that. But here with Zappa, he's taking a lot more, not samples, because I do see there's a large amount of personnel who are listed in here playing all these different instruments and performing these different sounds that are happening. But there is almost a sampled-like feel to it as it switches. It's kind of like a slideshow. This is how I see this. I see this as an old slideshow. And remember, like with an older slideshow, with like you actually had the projector and everything, like you would actually press the button, flip the thing, whatever it is, and you would flip the slides rather, and it would go from one thing to another. It was like a moving picture. That's what I'm kind of feeling with here. The slideshow, however, is happening relatively quickly. It begins and ends with something a little bit more conventional. Like in the very beginning of part one, it kind of sounds like the opening theme song to an old, 60s show or so. Like this, it kind of has that surf rock kind of feel to it, kind of easing us in. And then I would even argue if the way that it ends, actually, let me not go to the ending entries yet, but the next part after the opening, I don't know exactly the time stamp, but here, as it moved into this was also kind of conventional in its own way. So I was like, okay, I'm not quite sure where the rest of this is going. That's only about 2 minutes in, but it seems like we are going to be kind of cycling through these different slides and performances and different scenes and motifs, and we do so. However, after the second part, it just kind of goes. It's just a frisbee into the air, and where are we going to land? Who knows? You're playing shuffleboard, you're trying to get it on, one part, and it goes and slides in a completely different direction. And it is like so interesting to hear this kind of experimentation that Zappa's performing and conducting, and that he composed this at this point in his career. Like I said, 68, way before anything that we've heard. So it's kind of cool. Like, I don't know where this album lies in his discography, but it seems to be among the earlier creations. So it is kind of interesting that he was like already performing this kind of experimental work even before, some of the albums and such that we've listened to, which are already progressive and experimental in their own right. It's just really cool to hear all these different sides of Zappa. But the ending I thought was really nice. When it got into this last orchestral bit, pretty much here, this kind of sounded like the closing of the movie, of the film, as opposed to what we heard as in the opening. And so I think they both end in somewhat not predictable, but more conventional means when it comes to the orchestration. However, this whole middle, there's so much happening. There's no way I can like even digest all this. The interviews that seem to be handling. As I mentioned, it kind of feels like we are flipping through radio stations. We are just tuning AM, FM, PM, your M, my M. It is just going through different radio stations, different sounds. It is incredibly unpredictable
Because if I'm able to...
in the different directions it travels. This part kind of sounds like something we've heard from Zappa, though. I can't tell you what, but the way that's... I want to say it was something mallet-based, something that Ruth would play. It kind of sounded like... something that would reappear later in his career. But what I thought was kind of cool, and this is kind of relates to the lyrics, this section.
Kept taking parts and working on his car day.
So that section, as he's talking about, you know, working at this gas station, someone working on their car, and that whole section. What I thought was kind of interesting, and actually, you know what? Let's do this with the lyrics, because we'll get back to it. We'll get back to it. We'll bring it together. The way I see it, Barry, this should be a very dynamite show. Like I said, yeah, it was a very dynamite show. Then you have some parts here. Duodenum. Oh, no. Bit of nostalgia. Bit of nostalgia for the old folks. This kind of felt like... remember, like, you know, there's some kids movies or movies that are PG that, like, yeah, the kids can watch it, but there's sometimes, like, little darker scenes in them. This kind of felt like one of those scenes. Bit of nostalgia for the old folks. I'm advocating dark clothes. If I'm not alone, how long have I been asleep? As long as I have. Did you ever live in a drum? No. Well, then you aren't me. Now, I wonder if this is actual people on the album saying this, or is this actually lifted from an interview somewhere, or a film, or a sample, or something? I've only dreamt I lived in a drum ever since it got dark. Dreaming is hard. Yeah, but with nothing over your head? No, just light over my head and underneath too. I don't think I could take it without anything over my head. I couldn't either. Well, why don't you go out and see what's out there? Well, I don't know if that's what's out there. Now that's a thought if you'd like. Yes, but still, you can say darker and darker. I don't know what the outside of this thing looks like at all. I do. It's dark and murky. This is when he comes in. And when he comes in into the conversation, it's kind of scary a little bit. How do you get your water so dark? Because I'm paranoid. I'm very paranoid. And the water in my washing machine turns dark out of sympathy. Well, where can I get some of that? At your local drugstore. It's from Kansas. And we get into a little, what it sounds like to me, Dixieland jazz, just hopping like a frog at that point. Let's see, board at 0 for 90 with your 3 Stromberg 97s, almost Chinese, huh? Yeah, good bread, because I was making $2.71 an hour. I keep switching girls all the time, because if I'm able to find a girl with really groovy car that ain't built up, man, I'll go steady with her for a while until I build up a car and blow out the engine. Seems like Euphemism City, but also perhaps this could relate to the switching of all the music that's happening and the stations that are happening. Oh no, again, a little reprisal. And then at the gas station, which we get this story about the gas station. And this is what I think is kind of interesting. I'm going to pull up the music here really quick. But as he's describing what's going on, at some point, a conversation, seemingly like overheard at a party or something like that, just overheard conversation, starts to kind of leak into this as he's reading this story off. Now, the very little bit I could make out of that background conversation, the words from the background conversation seemed at least to line up with what was being said in this main narrative. There's a one point where I heard in the background they say whiskey, and that was like in this section where I was talking about like the booze and stuff like that. And there were just a few other moments in that specific section where I was like, oh, that's kind of interesting. I'm sure that's on purpose, and I'm sure that means something. But I just thought that was kind of interesting how that happened. I'm trying to...
Close it up and tear up the
and
seats.
here. Okay.
Just rip the seats completely.
See how the drums come in with a groove right there? They're talking about the seats. At this point, the Oldsmobile is running decently. Like, okay, things are moving correctly, moving good. So now the drums come in and give a little rhythm, acting like that engine. There's a few moments like that in this section.
So,
see whiskey.
I got a 56 Olds, which was this one chick that I was going with.
Axle grease.
And we used to drive that all over the place, and finally she got rid of that.
So, like, it's kind of cool, like, hearing the background conversation relating to the vehicle, the whiskey, and all these other things, and how this actually, like, it works in this story. You know, we get to, in a sense, with the background conversation, see the story taking place, but then we also have the narrative being spoken here in which we hear it. Kind of a unique bringing the senses together in that way. And then the last part, another pickup, and then it kind of gets into a little rambling rock where it kind of sounds like an old dusty pickup traveling down a dusty road. And then I don't know if I can go through this again, and we do go through it again right at that particular section, ending it with that nice orchestral bit. I should have kept you on the page because we're going to look at the Wikipedia page for this album here. It says, of course, like I mentioned, Zappa conducted the orchestra but did not perform on the album. Let's see. We're going to read a little bit about this. Produced simultaneously with We're Only In It For The Money, he saw Lumpy Gravy as the second part of a conceptual continuity that later included his final album, which we heard, the Diofa Civilization Phase 3. Let's see. I'm curious. Percussionist Emil Richards recalled that he did not know who Zappa was and did not take him seriously as the recording sessions began, believing that Zappa was merely the guitarist for a rock band. However, upon meeting them, Zappa handed the musicians the scores for the pieces, which were dense, complex, and varied. Some will call them black pages. Richard's close friend, Tommy Tedesco, was another member of the recording sessions. Tedesco mocked Zappa, believing he didn't know what he was doing. The bassoonist and bass clarinetist hired for the sessions refused to perform their parts, declaring them impossible to play. Zappa responded, "Oh, if I play your part, will you at least try it?" He then used his guitar to demonstrate the parts for the musicians, who then agreed to perform their parts. You cannot tell me that is not a boss move, if anything. By the end, Richards and Tedesco became convinced of Zappa's talent and became friends. They later performed on his later album. That is awesome. Some release lawsuit and re-editing situations here. I love that. I love the way that Zappa handled that. If I can play it, would you mind at least giving it a shot? And here is everyone that is involved in this album. Not James Bond, but Jimmy Bond. I'm just looking through. John Guerin. Okay, you have a couple familiar names. John Guerin. Who else? I'm trying to see if there's any other names here that stand out, at least initially, but I don't. Michael Lang, the name sounds familiar, but I can't say for sure. Capitol released the original all-orchestral album in '67. Capitol also intended to release a single consisting of the pieces Gypsy Airs and Sync Trap to promote the release. In response to the album's release, MGM threatened a lawsuit claiming that its release violated Zappa's contract. And it goes on from there. We're not going to read all that. But I think that it is really interesting, this whole approach to how he's, put the music together. Once again, kind of relating once again to that Varese influence and such. And it's just really cool, to kind of get these different sides of Zappa. And it really helps me to appreciate him because, once again, I don't know if I have to say it, but I'll say it. This is not something that I'm going to listen to for pleasure, right? This is something that for me, I like to look at it and listen to appreciate it and to just understand wow, music can be colored outside the lines, right? It doesn't have to be so conforming to certain genres and such. It can be anything really. And I always say that just sound. I enjoy sound, and maybe I don't enjoy all sounds, but I enjoy sound and the exploration of that. And I think that is cool to kind of get these different aspects of Zappa's music and just music in general, to be quite truthfully honest. But I thought this was a very interesting piece to listen to. Not one that I'd return to, but an interesting one, I think, to kind of study and to kind of look at. And I was thinking about the album name, Lumpy Gravy. And I was thinking about it gravy has a smooth texture sometimes, depending on what's in there. But there's a little bit of smoothness to it, right? From the opening, the ending, some bits in the middle, but it's a little lumpy. There's some other things in there, right? And we got a lot of lumps in the meat of this particular piece. You guys hear Liam? He's getting his diaper changed. Let me know what you guys, of course, thought about it in the comments. I hope that you enjoyed it. I hope at least maybe you got something out of it, even if you didn't enjoy it on a pleasure level. Alan, thank you so much for the introduction and for the recommendation, for the support. Really appreciate that as well. Please enjoy the rest of your day, and I will see you all tomorrow. Bye, guys.